Thank you, President Alex. This is a great opportunity for me. Give you a little bit of background. If many of you recall, I've served in a leadership role with the Water Company, and then back in 2012 or so, Sheriff Fisher asked me to come over and assist with MSD in their transition, and I committed to doing that for about a 2 to 3 year period. But one of my tasks essentially is go through the search process to bring in the next leader of MSD to take us through that next phase of transition. And so it's my pleasure here today to be introducing Tony Parrott. I want to give you a little bit of background about Tony. I've known Tony for 20 plus years, Tony, and we followed a similar career path. I started on the front line. Tony started on the front line of the Butler County water and wastewater system. That was after graduating from Georgetown College in Kentucky. So what's unique is Tony comes to us from Ohio, but he has roots in Kentucky. I'll talk about it a little bit. He served there for about 20 years, worked his way up from a frontline employee all the way to executive director. From there, in 2005, he then took the opportunity to lead the Cincinnati MSD, Metropolitan Sewer District in Cincinnati, and also their effort to combine water and wastewater services, an effort that we're doing here in Louisville as well. And then from there, about a little over a year ago, contacted Tony, and he was interested in coming to Louisville. When I really got down to know Tony, I did not know that Tony was from Marion County, Kentucky. Right here in Kentucky, he's a big Cards fan. So essentially, this is really a homecoming for him. The other unique thing about Tony, I really love his presentation today. He's a communications major, so he can communicate, unlike engineer here. And what is really unique about Tony is he's representing us as well at the national level with the National Association of Clean Water Agencies on their board, and also the Water Environment Research Foundation. So we get Tony with 30 years of experience here in Louisville, Kentucky. He has roots in Kentucky, and then also he's representing us at the national level. So Tony, come on up here, and we'll get you going.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for everything you've done for Louisville and Jefferson County and the role of the Water Company and MSD. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak at Rotary today. One of the things that we all know is that Rotary is one of the most respected community organizations, and I'm honored to be here. One of the things that I realize is that there's a lot of common core issues and principles with Rotary and with MSD. And so we are actually connected in a lot of areas in terms of dealing with our passion and perseverance for lasting change, and also our passion for service that help accomplish remarkable things in our community. And we apply leadership and expertise to social issues very well. Now, one thing that I will ask is how many of you flushed your restroom facilities this morning? Show of hands. And so on behalf of our board chair, Cindy Cottle, our board member, Mr. John Phelps, and 650 MSD employees, you're welcome. So, but in terms of just dealing with, dealing with what happens when you flush your restroom facilities, MSD really is broader than that. We do a lot of stuff. We do deal with drainage and inland flooding. We deal with a lot of different things as it relates to flood protection, protecting the city and Jefferson County from flooding from the Ohio River. But there's a lot of things that I think from a value context that I think the public just doesn't understand in terms of what we do at MSD. So what I'd like to do is just take a minute to kind of show you just a quick clip.
Somewhere, every drop of water that we use goes somewhere. to us. And every minute of every day, we are here for our communities, our environment, and our future. Day and night, year after year, we clean water. We reuse it, recycle it, and return it. We don't do it for recognition. We do it because we know that without clean water, life stops. What we do every day protects the world we live in and the world we leave behind. We are creating the future of water. Every decision, every action, every innovation we make makes clean water possible, makes life possible. That is our legacy.
The key word in that is protecting public health in the community, and also legacy. We have a legacy system that was built in the 1800s, and we have a legacy system that at this point we're reviewing to make sure that how do we can sustain that system. So we think MSD is foundational to the transformation of Louisville and Jefferson County. There's about $1.2 billion of expected investment in the downtown area. There's also a projection of about 6 billion gallons of economic investment in the metro-wide Louisville. So we think that MSD is foundational to the transformational process and progress of Louisville. The one problem is that when you think about the issues that we have, there's a lot of issues that, is it fair to say that prosperity actually begins or depends on effective, reliable wastewater systems? When you think about the major corporations that are housed here in Louisville and Jefferson County, the thousands of folks that work for them, and getting to work and coming to deal with things within their jobs, we think that these systems are very, very important. We think that the foundational development is the transformation cannot exist without a system to support that development as we move forward. Major corporations supporting thousands and thousands of jobs. However, the reality is that we cannot transform because of the issues with the infrastructure. In terms of dealing with flooding, inland flooding, all those type of things that impact communities and impact neighborhoods, those are the challenges and the issues and the things that we are dealing with at MSD. And so you hear about things, you read about things in the newspaper, you probably read the article last weekend about the sewer problem related to the consent decree, and we're investing a lot of money to deal with the consent decree. But the consent decree is only one thing, maybe 25% of what we're responsible for at MSD. And so what I want to try to talk about today is really the more broader context of the challenges and the risks that we are facing as an entity. So let's just say that what we do is our system is really a rusty bucket. A rusty bucket that for too long we've made investments, and we have to continue to make investments, but we've been really so focused on the consent decree that we've been using more of a Band-Aid approach to deal with keeping that bucket whole. Simply put, our old bucket can no longer bail us out. And so what we're looking at are really identifying the 5 risk areas that we have as an organization and trying to deal with those effectively and bring those forward for discussion. So one of the areas that we're looking at is flood protection. And so this is just a picture of one of our largest flood protection facilities along Beargrass Creek. And you know, that is a system that is so important and vital to protecting the community. From a flood protection perspective, this map kind of shows you, and we have 4 or 5 maps in the back of the room for you to kind of get more context as you leave. But when you think about this map, it kind of looks at the flood protection system. We have 16 major flood pump stations along the Ohio River. We also have a 29-mile levee system that we're responsible for. And so this map kind of shows you if these systems fail, what type of inundation we would have, not only along Ohio River, but actually system-wide. And so as you drill down, how important is a flood pump station? This is a snapshot of the Patty's Run flood pump station that was built in 1953. That flood pump station really serves a very important piece of protecting a very large part of the population of Louisville and Jefferson County. Approximately 214,000 folks are protected from flooding, about 25% of the population of Jefferson County. So it's a very important asset, and we are looking at what we need to do to continue to support that asset. Another tenet of what we're responsible for is drainage and inland flooding. Last year, you may remember in 2015, we had a lot of system-wide rain events. This is a snapshot of the outer loop area as we head approaching a national turnpike. And you can see just the inland flooding and how that impacts traffic, major corridors for transportation, folks to get to work, get to school, get to hospitals, those type of things. And those are major risks that we are dealing with. In 15, we also had areas that, when you look at this map, kind of shows you it's not just, it's all over the county in terms of how inundation would happen in terms of drainage and flooding within our service area. And so, as you drill down in 2015, we actually had neighborhoods where we had to do water rescues. And this is in the Sunderland and the Dunbarton area after major rain event that really impacted the community. And these are real issues that we are trying to address and deal with our system and with our assets. Here's another area out in Okolona in 15 where we had a sewer backup during the flooding, during the same type of flooding event. And again, this is real-time issues where we're really trying to deal with how do we protect the public and how do we protect folks in their homes. Another tenet is viaduct flooding. We have about 36 viaducts that we're responsible for to make sure that they're passable during a rain event. And these are very important public safety and business growth issues that we must address as a utility. This map kind of shows you the infrastructure solutions that we've identified for viaducts in our 20-year plan. And all of this, as you can kind of note, every map kind of has a price tag to it, and it's kind of adding up as we go, and I'll give you the total as we move forward. But when we think about the viaducts, major transportation areas, and so this is the viaduct at 3rd and Eastern Parkway. When you think about the transportation corridors and the fact that there's a 40-acre technology park planned there, how do we make sure that we don't impact that and impact student quality of life and safety, and also as they start to expand at Papa John's, making sure that there's no impact there. So when you think about this viaduct, it does go under whenever we have a massive rain event, and so there are challenges and issues that will be impacted with the viaducts within our system. So when you think about The other tenant, aging infrastructure. We have aging infrastructure where it causes crumbling of, most of our assets are underground, so you don't see it until the street caves in. And so that's a major challenge and a major issue for us to address. And our system, this map kind of shows you sort of our facilities and our areas. The age of our system, we have some assets that were built in the Civil War. We have some assets that range between 110 and 150 years old, some that are between 76 and 100 years old, and some between 51 and 75 years old. So our system is getting very old, and this map kind of gives you the detail on that. But when you think about the aging infrastructure that we have in our system, this is what happens when a major sewer goes down, a street crumbles in. And so can you imagine, even though there's traffic constrictions during construction, can you imagine what would happen if a bus or something was on top of that when that street gave in? And so when we talk about public safety and concerns, those are the type of things that we're dealing with. This particular sewer on Broadway was an old brick sewer that was built back in the 1800s, but this is what it looks like underground. You can see that it's made out of brick, and those bricks are now rattling, or I should say unraveling, and causing problems and issues under our streets. Another important asset is a floodgate or sluice gate that we have down in the southwestern part of our system. This system is probably one of the most critical flood protection systems that we have. It's sort of the last line of defense of keeping the Ohio River from flooding a very large area of Louisville. Actually, the gate failed back in May 1st, 1983. It was installed in 1975. We had our first major failure in 83, and there were a lot of folks that were impacted. More than 2,000 homes and businesses were flooded. And so, ironically, when that happened, also the MSD director lost his job. So when we think about, this isn't about, me, it's about, making sure that we don't have those type of failures and those type of things that happen. And so we did have a minor failure earlier this year in April. I got the call on April 1st, actually. I thought they were joking. But this asset is being repaired right now. But it is the last line of defense to make sure that we can protect public health and safety within that area. Another tenant is wastewater treatment. We are responsible for managing the largest wastewater treatment center in the state of Kentucky. This site shows you what that plant looks like. It's very compact, and it is one of 5 major treatment plants that we are now responsible for in Jefferson County. I show you that map basically because when you think about the Morris Warren facility, the colored map kind of shows you the importance of that asset. You see the colors in green. All of that service area in Jefferson County goes to our Morris Warren facility. And so when we think about the age of that facility and the issues and the importance of what it does, it serves a very large piece of our community. And so we have major investments in the upgrade and expansion of those facilities to be able to keep them operating and be able to make permit. So when you think about Morris Forman, this picture just kind of shows you what it looks like. On the left is more so in normal dry conditions. We actually had a major power outage back in 2015. It actually caused the facility to be flooded. So making those repairs and keeping that facility upgraded is very important to making sure that we can, treat water and meet permits and also keep our community safe. So a lot of you have probably heard about the increased frequency of intense storm events that have been going on in our nation. Do I say climate change? But I think when you think about how it impacted folks in West Virginia this year, how it impacted folks down in Paducah this year, and how it impacted folks just up in Cincinnati 6 weeks ago with flash flooding and closing an interstate, I think, we've kind of dodged the bullet on some of these systems that have just sit down in front of communities and rain and rain and rain and rain and rain. So I say that basically because I think that climate change or the increased frequency of extreme storm events is real. This kind of shows you between 49, between 1949 and 2004, we had 21 events in 55 years that were a 3-inch rain event that usually inundates our system. When you look at the far right of the slide, from 2005 through 2015, we actually had 11 events that were of that same magnitude. So really it's just to kind of show you that increased frequency of storm events is real. It's impacting communities all the way around us. And so that's why we see the inland flooding and the issues in different communities that are impacting lives and also neighborhoods throughout the country. Our system is very old, and we must renovate the outdated Louisville system to be able to serve the Louisville of tomorrow. And the good news is, all of these are challenges. They are risk, but with risk, I think, come opportunities. The opportunities that we have identified are solutions that we have spent a lot of time putting together. And we're going to be talking about that. That's why we're here today, is to kind of let you know what those solutions are. The bad news is, those solutions have a price tag. And so our analysis over the last 2 years has said that a 20-year plan would require $4.3 billion of investment to deal with all these risks. That's $4.3 billion with a D. And so the real issue is, even though we've looked at it as a 20-year plan, we need the community to tell us how important are these risks and how fast do we need to address them. Because that is really going to determine how we finance them and how we deal with these issues. And so when you think about how we finance them, we get our revenue from consumption from the public. And so what this map shows you in the blue bars basically is consumption from 1971 through 2015. The blue bars kind of say that although the red line shows that our system has grown in terms of customers, the consumption has remained flat for the past 50 years. And so you can't really get blood out of a turnip. And so one of the things that we are challenged with as a utility, as more innovative technologies come forward for water reduction in our faucets and in our restroom facilities and our appliances, is sort of an industry trend as well, using less water. And so as people use less water, it impacts our revenue stream. And so you hear us talking about what we need to do to increase rates, and it's all because of this, because our consumption is the same as it was 50 years ago, but we have an asset that is over 100 years old and needs to be replaced. And so we know that rate increases are a sensitive issue. We know that affordability to our communities is an issue. This kind of shows you that at the red line, 2% of median household income is an affordability guideline that US EPA uses to determine whether there is high burden on a community. So right now, we know that 28% of our customer base falls above that 2% median household threshold for high burden. So anything that we do with our assets and anything we do with rates, we have to take that into consideration, and we have to now start narrating an affordability assistance program as we start to figure out how we fund these major capital needs that we have in our system. So this year, we did get a rate increase of 6.9%. That rate increase, this kind of shows you, puts us right on top of the U.S. average in terms of what folks are paying for wastewater on a monthly basis. It also shows you that a lot of communities within the state and with the region are dealing with the same issues in terms of aging infrastructure and dealing with assets. We're very competitive with Nashville, we're very competitive with Indianapolis, and so everybody is dealing with this issue. So when we talk about, aging infrastructure, we talk about the assets, and we talk about how do we fund replacement of that, we want folks to understand that this is what the system is saying needs to be done to continue the legacy that we've created at MSD. So, you know, the old bucket that I showed you earlier, now, you know, we have an investment that needs to be made to deal with infrastructure solutions that ultimately will create a new bucket, a new legacy for the next generation of residents of Louisville and Jefferson County. And it's all about mitigating the risk, making sure that we don't continue to have an outdated system, and to make sure that we can have outcomes that are going to be beneficial to the community for the next generation. And that's supporting community revitalization. That's also dealing with how we deal with economic development. How do we deal with supplier diversity and job creation, all that type of stuff. So you hear me talking about economic value. Economic value is very important because when we think about those infrastructure investments, it basically means that we are going to be doing things that are going to renovate today's system, making sure we can comply with health and environmental laws, and provide a reliability of service, and to make sure that we are stewards of the community's investment. And so when you think about investment, you know, let's look at the economic impact in Louisville. We will, and we being MSD, for the next 10 years, we will have a $3.4 billion impact to the local economy in Louisville and Jefferson County, with what we do with our capital program and with what we do with our operations. We will also sustain 2,300 jobs on an annual basis, based on what we do at MSD. And so there is economic value when you think about every dollar that you invest in infrastructure, you actually create $2.62 in the local economy. So you do the math. If our economic value is $3.4 billion, what does that mean for the local economy? So it impacts what we were talking about earlier with the support of economic development investments in downtown Louisville and also throughout metro government. So we are very familiar with the rotary four-way test. And so when we think about, you know, what we're here to talk about, basically we're saying we are going to be asking the community to join us in the conversation. And so the information that we are bringing forward, we think kind of meets the four-way test. We know that it's truthful information. We know that it is fair in terms of cost to all involved. We've talked about the affordability assistance piece that we're building into our work infrastructure solution. Will it bring goodwill and strengthen neighborhoods? Will it be beneficial to all in terms of investments all across Louisville? So we think we meet the four-way test. The real question is, how will we move forward in terms of dealing with the risk that we are faced with today with our system and how it impacts Louisville and Jefferson County? The risk, as I mentioned before, are basically inland flooding, Ohio River flood protection, aging infrastructure, facilities, all those things that need upgraded that are impacting us. How do we deal with that? And how do we make sure that as we move forward, you know, we're bringing forth outcomes that are going to be supportive of economic development, job creation, eliminating risk, and also dealing with making our community safe, and also to provide value and economic value to the community. And so the real question is, we know what the infrastructure solution is. The community conversation that we need assistance from you is, how fast do we do it? How do we fund it? And what type of legacy do we want to create now for Louisville going forward? And so with that, those are really the issues and the points that I wanted to bring to you today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tony. So we have time for questions from Rotarians, so please come to the mics and be Be sure to introduce yourself and ask your question for our special guest.
Tony, I don't think this is on. John Walczak with the Louisville Zoo. Thank you for doing the great job you do in keeping us safe and protecting us. Is the switch on? It's not? It's not on though. Oh, thanks for the great work you do protecting us, keeping us safe. I know you're involved a lot with also sustainability efforts and helping keep our watershed protected and other efforts. Can you tell us a little bit about your sustainability efforts?
Well, you know, we're doing a lot of great things. We are obviously investing a lot of money in green infrastructure because it also is a solution that helps us deal with mitigating runoff and that contribute to either combined sewer overflows or sanitary sewer overflows. We're doing a lot of green infrastructure throughout the business districts, various business districts. We're also planting a lot of trees. As you know, I think we have a goal of planting, help me out here, 10,000 trees a year or something like that. 1,000? Over 10 years. 1,000 trees over 10 years. And so we've been very successful in making sure that we're doing those type of things. And of course, when you think about water quality on the stormwater side, making sure that we work with various sectors to make sure that we're mitigating the nutrients that ultimately are going to be impacting our waterways with stormwater improvements as well. So those are some of the sustainability stuff we've done. We've done other things in parking lots with permeable pavement and those type of things to look at other B&Ps to reduce stormwater runoff.
Tony McClure. Question regarding different neighborhoods deciding what they want versus what is economically more practical. How do you all handle that? Or is that a council decision in the mayoral?
Well, I mean, you know, our consent decree program and other projects really require certain type of remedies. And so we try to make sure that we bring those remedies forward to make sure that the public can have input on what we're doing. I don't know, you may be following some of the story earlier this year when we were doing a basin out in the Smoketown area. We actually had to go back and lower that basin underground after listening to the community. Right now, we just made a decision to look at going with a deep tunnel solution in lieu of impacting major areas of the community with other basins. So we do take that feedback and take it into consideration, but when it's a consent decree type of requirement, there's really not a whole lot of give in terms of changing that because we have milestones and stipulated penalties that are associated with getting those projects done. But we have a public input and a public outreach process where we welcome that. The consent decree work that I talk about, that is the work that has to be done. The $4.3 billion worth of work that we're talking about now kind of falls a little bit outside of the consent decree work, but it's still work that needs to be done. And the problem is those are the risk areas that we need feedback from the community to tell us how fast we do it.
Hi, Tony, Aaron Walter. Those pictures of the old infrastructure are amazing, and I was curious if there's any thought given or process in place when you're taking, silverware, brick, and wood out of the system. Is there anywhere that those go for future use or for representation of the system, community organizations in the community?
Well, I don't know. Where's Steve Tedder? I can't find him. He must have his white shirt on. One of the things that I know the water company has a water museum where they take different things. We don't have something of that level where we have a museum, but I think it would be nice to be able to your point, take those assets and start creating that historical piece so that even though we're replacing them, it's not forgotten.
Charlie Mattingly. Just give us a quick overview of bonded indebtedness and your picture of bonded capacity as far as funding these needed changes.
That, my friend, is really the whole crux of the whole issue. we have very limited headroom. Right now, I think we're at about $2 billion of outstanding debt. That's $2 billion. We have headroom of about $350 million in terms of borrowing capacity. And so when you think about that whole blood out of the turnip slide that I talked about, the rate increase is really about increasing that headroom so that we have more credit limits so that we can borrow and do the work and kickstart the projects that really need to be done. So, you know, we have very limited headroom right now. And so, you know, our board has a certain authority that we can raise rates to, but in order to increase that borrowing capacity even further, you know, we need more than that.
Yes, Mike Poole. And I think we're getting there, but the money that you're taking monthly for the decree, that's really only paying off bonds that have many more years before they're paid off?
Well, actually, those bonds are it's kind of a rolling thing. I mean, we issue bonds pretty much every year. And so even though we've been doing consent decree work for over a decade, some of those initial bonds would have a 20 to 30-year life. But for example, the bonds we issued this year, majority of those bonds were for consent decree work. And so they will have a 30-year term for those bonds. So to answer your question, our consent decree ends in 2024. We will be issuing bonds up through 2024 to fund those consent decree projects, and those bonds have a 30-year life.
Dave Luckett, I know one of the issues is capacity because of combined sewers. When did they first start mandating separate sanitary and storm sewers? And when, if ever, have you started digging holes and replacing combined sewers with separate systems?
Well, as a part of the, I guess you could say the Clean Water Act, there was really a focus on how we were going to be dealing with combined sewer overflows. I think you saw when a lot of the development in our urban core cities started to stretch out beyond the inner urban core with separate developments. You started to see those sanitary systems being developed and having separate stormwater and separate sanitary systems. We have a lot of focus on, you know, how we're dealing with even outdated treatment facilities that are because of that development. But now, as we start to look at the focus on the combined sewer system and the separated system, SSOs, separate sanitary sewer system overflows, they are illegal. And so we have to eliminate those under the Clean Water Act. Combined sewer overflows, the whole goal there is controlling the amount of overflow to a certain level that complies with the consent order that we have signed. So the remedy that we would use for a separate system is a little bit different than what we would use for a combined sewer system. But a separate sanitary sewer overflow is illegal, and we must mitigate that 100%. And a combined sewer overflow is something that we must control that meets the requirement of our consent decree.
Lynn Stinson. As much as I hate to bring this subject up, I can't help but wonder, in the event of a terrorist attack, what plan does the water department have?
Well, you know, we as MSD, one of the things that we did a few years ago, we did do what we would call sort of a homeland security type of assessment. And so we have done that assessment, and we know where critical issues are. We are trying to build redundancy in terms of our facilities with backup generation. We're also, well, I'll just say it this way. We are doing a disaster recovery type of center where we will have backup to be able to manage a lot of our systems. A lot of our systems are managed through what we call SCADA technology right now. So we're trying to make sure that we have contingency and redundancy in those systems. The easy answer would be particularly when you think about wastewater treatment, 100 years ago, it used to go straight to the river. A lot of our systems would. So there, and I'll use the example that we had from 2015 where we had our Morris Morgan treatment facility flooded for a day or two. You know, it does impact the amount of treatment that we can do at our facilities. But in some cases, we would have to bypass and go straight to, we still have the capability of bypassing and going straight to the Ohio River. And so from a contingency standpoint, we have minimized as many risks as we have in our system. We're down to 5 major treatment facilities where, you know, maybe 20, 30 years ago, we had over 200 different various treatment facilities. So our risks are minimized from that perspective, and we have a very aggressive security protocol to protect our system.
Last question to you, Angela.
Okay. Can I ask two if there's time? We'll see how long it takes to answer the first one.
Okay.
Mr. Fair, thanks for being here. First question is, so you gave us some great numbers, 4.3 billion over the next 20 years, I believe you said.
Yes.
And we're being driven predominantly, as I understood you to say, by EPA regulation and in compliance with those rules and regulations. So how do those investments improve our water quality? So is EPA giving you all results of what we can expect in terms of how much cleaner our water is now than 20 years ago? Is it continuing to get cleaner by each of these millions of dollar investments? And who's actually monitoring and reporting, you know, nationally what the water quality improvement is? Because we're not the only city making these types of investments.
You are probably bringing up the best question that I've heard in a long time, which is not only in Louisville, but across the country, when we make all these investments, are our rivers and our streams still going to be fishable and swimmable? And I can tell you, based upon what I do know, the volume of overflow that we are seeing in our system, and not only in Louisville and Jefferson County, will they be fishable and swimmable? No. Will we improve water quality in our streams? Yes. When we complete projects, we will have to do what they call post-construction monitoring, and we will be able to report out, you know, what that water quality improvement will be. But it's a little bit broader than, you know, just the systems itself. It's also dealing with what we call non-point discharges, whether it be with fertilizers and farms and those type of things, which, you know, aren't currently regulated. So we think that future regulations are probably going to be coming to deal with those type of impacts to water quality as well. So to your point, we are making major investments, and it's really going back to what I said. Sanitary sewer overflows are illegal. We have to eliminate those. Combined sewer overflows, we have to control the amount of overflow that we're putting into our rivers and our streams, and it will improve water quality. But will they be fishable and swimmable? I think the question is still out on whether or not we will get to that level, but we will improve water quality.
And if I may ask another question, it has to do with, because you alluded to this in your presentation, and as in our role on Metro Council, we do have to take a vote on anything that's over 7% increase. How are you all going to orchestrate getting public opinion? What is your all's commitment so that we know how our constituents want to time these investments that you're asking of us?
Well, you know, I think that's a part of the community conversation. I think you're going to see sort of a presentation like this that is going to be geared for every sector of the community. We're going to be going out and having community conversations. We're going to be talking specifically on how these risks impact their communities and impact their quality of life. And so we're hoping that we can build advocacy from the ground up so that folks can say, these are major risks and these really need to be addressed, and how soon do we want to address them. I think that when you think about the 20-year thing that I mentioned, the $4.3 billion, you know, that is programmed in to do certain things within a certain window, you know, and so we need impact from feedback from the community is 20 years soon enough? And so that's the community conversation that we're kicking off now, so that when and if we do come back, we are going to be building that advocacy that says, you know, the community understands what the system needs are, and that they will support the infrastructure solutions that we're bringing forward.
Hi, Tony. My name is Pat Payne. I'm interested in what is happening with septic tanks. You know, there's quite a lot of them, I think, still in Jefferson County. Are they legal, illegal? Are the people going to be able to use them for as long as they live there or forever? I'm just curious where we're going with that kind of.
Well, I mean, you know, we've done a great job of eliminating a lot of septic systems and a lot of, like I said, smaller package plant and treatment systems in Jefferson County. And so I think probably we've invested almost $1 billion over the last 30 years to do that. There's some rural areas with larger tracts that still have septic systems. They have to meet certain requirements under the Department of Health or the state. And so if we get requests from the state or we get requests from a community to provide public sewers, we're always stand ready to be able to do that. But there are septic systems that are still out there, and they are monitored by the local health authorities.
So they could use them forever?
Well, there's certain requirements that they have to meet. I don't know what the life of a septic system is with upgrades, et cetera. But, you know, there's nothing illegal about a septic system.
Okay.
All right, well, let's give a round of applause to Tony Gregg.